All right, welcome in. National Championship. It is almost upon us here. The Ohio State Buckeyes taking on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. We've seen a ton of Irish love in the marketplace since this line opened up. Is there any value in still betting them? Or maybe it's just Ohio State all the way? These three guys will point us in the right direction. I promise you that, as we welcome back in the college football kickoff show crew from the whole year long, as Drew Martin in the house, Ralph the Pen Michaels, and of course, Rob Veno ready to roll here as we're down to two teams here, guys. First 12-team playoff we've had in college football. Seems to have been a success, certainly if you're the college football committee to end with these two teams. These are two legendary fan bases. I don't think you can go wrong, but how they got here, interesting path there, Drew. We saw this at 9.5, down to 8.5 now. What are we thinking about this game? Are you looking side? You looking total? How do you approach this one?
Joe, I'm thinking side here, and you're right. I mean, a pricey ticket with these two fan bases. I'm seeing $1,400, but Notre Dame 14-1, 13-2 against the spread. Even more impressive here, Joe. 11 straight covers. Now catching 8.5, both at DraftKings and offshore. If you check out the WagerTalk live odds screen, I'll tell you, Joe, I mean, Notre Dame 3-0 as a dog, winning all three outright against Georgia, Penn State, and Texas A&M in week one. And we got to remember Ohio State, that was 14-14, middle of the fourth quarter against Texas before they kind of had that ending go their way for the Buckeyes. But I'll tell you this, Joe, I mean, number one and number two scoring defenses, passing defenses in the country. I don't really want to lay 8 and a hook here. So overall, I think Notre Dame plus 8.5 is worth a shot. I kind of like the Irish here, Joe.
Liking the Irish here, and you're not alone there, Drew. The market certainly seems to agree with you on that spot. Rob Veno, 9.5. I don't know. That was the look-ahead line. Kind of felt like that was where we were going to be looking at once if both teams ended up meeting each other in a national championship. Here we are. It looks like, by the way, the total ticking up a little bit. 46 and a half. We saw 45 and a half on the look ahead between these two teams. I guess if you like Notre Dame, you like the under. Because I don't think if that thing goes flying over, Rob, I don't know that Notre Dame is going to keep pace with Ohio State's offense. What are you thinking?
Well, I mean, if you like Notre Dame against Penn State, you would have been on under and it went over.
Yeah,
so you never. And that first half looked like a dead nuts under. Didn't happen though. Second half broke out, got out of control. I'll say this, Joe, just from a starting point, the first thing to look at here was the health of Notre Dame's offensive line. We saw two offensive linemen go out of that game against Penn State, and somehow, some way, they still managed. Going to get their right guard back. They don't get their left tackle back. So you got a combination of the two guys that filled in for him on that particular night. And we saw what Abdul Carter did on that particular night. He went absolutely berserk. Ohio State has the same type of edge pressure. It's an assignment and a half for Notre Dame to keep Riley Leonard upright in this game. Then I'd go to this. And let me just say real quick here about the Notre Dame schedule so far. It's impressive to beat Georgia and Penn State. Very impressive. What's not proven yet is that they can beat a team that has a real offense. Georgia had a backup quarterback, zero offense, maybe the worst offensive team Georgia's put on the field last 5 years. Penn State's offense, again, bash Drew Aller. We got validated for bashing Drew Aller. He's certainly not what a lot of people think he is, and he proved it in that game. So here you get a real offense with Ohio State. We'll get into that a little bit. The difference between Aller and Will Howard is like night and day. And honestly, if Kansas State still had Will Howard, they're probably an 11-win team this year rather than Avery Johnson. He's been that accurate. He's been that good. Yes, he has the weaponry around him, but he's been that good. I think the difference between, again, what you're going to see in vertical passing games, if you're Notre Dame, and against Georgia, you had a team that doesn't do anything but drop the football wide receiver-wise. And against Penn State, you had no vertical threats whatsoever. And I even thought that their vertical game might be able to produce one play that would be an advantage. It didn't work out that way. Ohio State, they're going to take some clues from Texas on how to keep Jeremiah Smith quiet. Can they repeat that? Do they keep all the Ohio State receivers quiet? I don't know that they can. I think defensively, Ohio State's got zero fear of Notre Dame, right? It didn't seem like Penn State feared their wide receivers. Just throw 8 in the box, shut down the run, see what Leonard's legs and his arm can do. I think Ohio State, with their corners, has no fear and could absolutely shut down the run game here and put on pressure. All these elements here, these matchup elements, all point strongly toward Ohio State. Let's say this, too. Notre Dame running back Jeremiah Love making the statement that he wanted Ohio State in this game. We lost to them last year in a game we should have won. It's made Buckeye bulletin boards online. It certainly has made the locker room. I'm sure Ohio State sees that. 17-14 last year. Ohio State wins in the last second on a play where Notre Dame only had 10 guys on the field. Made it even worse. I don't think they can come within 10 points here, Joe, to be honest with you. I don't think they faced a team as balanced offensively as Ohio State, as challenging as Ohio State, and with a quarterback that's as accurate as Will Howard. So for me, it's probably Ohio State in this game minus the points. You kind of wonder, and again, I don't know. I'm not in a syndicate group. But you kind of wonder, with so much time between games, how much of this push down towards Notre Dame is kind of halfway phony line movement to get people to buy into Notre Dame and push it down even further. I'm not sure, but regardless, I think Ohio State's the side.
Well, and that's a great point, Rob, and I think it's worth asking too, because I think a lot of the initial money was simply people holding Ohio State future tickets to win it all. And going, all right, I'll take the 9.5 points. And if you're going to look to hedge, what better way? Because that's a ridiculous. I mean, that happened almost automatically, Rob, too. Right off the bat, we saw, a point and a half come off this line. It was like everyone running to the window because what you saw, that wasn't public money moving it. It just feels like that might have been the hedging money coming in from everyone that's holding an Ohio State ticket at plus money from betting it over the last month or 2 months. That would make sense, would it not?
It absolutely would, Joe. Now, obviously, the tourism from, and it doesn't even have to be tourism anymore, right? Because you punch in a ticket online on your computer at home. Mm-hmm. But the amount of Ohio people that run through Las Vegas during the spring and summer picking up Ohio State futures tickets is probably as huge as any. So, yeah, it makes perfect sense if that's the way it went down. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if, in fact, there's real Ohio State money out there that probably would rather see 7.5 than 9.5, and just hoping that the bandwagon of public money gets behind what they're seeing in the push towards Notre Dame, and maybe it lowers the line a little bit.
So it's Ralph, what was your thought when you saw this open up at 9.5 and then all of a sudden get cratered down to 8.5? What was your initial thought here? That were you going? What are we seeing in Notre Dame? What's driving this market here? And did you agree with that line move?
Well, I did. You look at what the look-ahead line was, and I wrote down a look-ahead line last week of Notre Dame 7.5 and Penn State 8.5 if they were playing Ohio State. And I think this, just like in the playoffs, I'm interested to see, when we get to the NFL playoffs, we know that the public money, it's the only time public money is going to sway the sharps, because the public money in the playoffs is enough to move a line where the actual sharps dwarf it. Where during the regular season, those guys are making big bets and you're not going to catch up with public money. So I think it's the sharps saying this look-ahead line was 7.5. Ohio State could have been tied in that game. Let's grab the 2 points of value and bring it down. So semi-agree, it could be those guys that had the futures, or in the situation. When I break down the game, and I do want to mention this, guys, if you're a brand new customer at WagerTalk, if you want a reason to make your first purchase ever, Well, I have a 5% on this game for Monday. And if you use the code NEW34, any brand new customer at WagerTalk can get that 5% for $1. You save $34, you pay $1, code NEW34 to get my 5% play. And I will say this, though, breaking down the game. Notre Dame has to play almost a perfect game to beat Ohio State. Not to cover, but to beat them. Ohio State doesn't need to play anywhere near a perfect game. And a couple things that concern me on the Notre Dame side is this. They have been amazing in turnovers. They're plus 17 turnovers this year. And the only two games they failed to win the turnover battle was Northern Illinois and against Penn State. So they've had very fortunate luck. And while turnovers, if you're a good defense, you can force turnovers. When you recovered 10 of 15 fumbles, there's some fortunate luck there. Fumbles are really a 50-50. So, they have done a good job recovering it. And then when I look at the sacks in the playoffs, Notre Dame has only 8 sacks in the 3 playoff games. Their last 3 games, but they've allowed 7. So they're only plus 1 sack. In the last 3 games, Ohio State has 16 sacks, and they've only allowed 2. They're plus 14 sacks. Ohio State on the year is number 3 in sacks with 51. And because they get so much pressure with the front 4, they are going to be able to spy Riley Leonard and not hurt their pass defense. That's an important tool here. So, while I'm going to skip over some of the game points with what Rob and Drew said, they made some great points. I'm going to give you 2 player props here, one of which was an actual play that I loaded for my clients. Number 1, I do like Riley Leonard's under 35.5 rush yards. You look at what he's done. He's broken some big plays, but I don't think he gets those big plays against the speed of Ohio State's defense and with a spy on him. And number 2, my prop, this is an actual 2% prop play I loaded. It's Carnell Tate over 3.5 receptions, and you're getting plus $1.20. Now, you look at Carnell Tate last week, 7 receptions for 85 yards last week? And while he only had 1 reception the first 2 playoff games, Tennessee and Oregon play a lot of zone defense. And all Will Howard has to do was throw 23 passes in those 2 games to Ibuka and Jeremiah Smith, and we saw what happened in those blowout wins. So I think Notre Dame is going to be forced to play man-to-man, and when he plays man-to-man, that means your top 2, maybe top 3 cornerbacks are on Jeremiah Smith and Ibuka. Prior to those 2 playoff games with the zone defense, Carnell Tate has topped this number 5 straight times, reaching over 3.5 receptions. To me, it's the best prop on the board. We're getting plus money. And Carnell Tate, over 3.5 receptions, plus $1.20.
Oh, I like it. All right, a couple of props to go with it there as well. Drew, if you like Notre Dame in this thing to stay within the number, what do you think wins the game? What's the number here? What do you think the score is? Lower scoring? Or is this a 24-17 kind of game? Or is this thing, you think the winner is going to get closer to 30 points to have to win?
Yeah, Joe, I could definitely see it 24-17. I go back to, how good both of these defenses are, and I don't think they're going to change anything. Yes, Ohio State's wide receivers are top notch, but Notre Dame has played lockdown defense pretty much all season long, Joe. So, yeah, I do think it correlates, under in Notre Dame. And, let's face it, it's the national championship. Nerves are going to be running. It's a big time atmosphere. And a lot of times those start off slow. We haven't seen it in years past, at least recent years past, but I can see that happening in Atlanta here, Joe. And so, yeah, 24-20, something of that nature. And I think Notre Dame stays within the number. That's why I kind of like the 8.5.
Taking the 8.5 in that one. Rob, let me ask you here, because I've heard it a couple of different ways when it comes to team totals in this game here, because I think we've got Notre Dame hovering around 17.5 right now. And the only issue, and I think we've got 27.5 for Ohio State as the team total. The only problem I have is that we're talking about an Ohio State defense that has only allowed a team to get past 17 points. And I believe that was Oregon, which I got to believe we all consider to be much better offensively than what Notre Dame is going to bring to the table. In fact, we're talking about offenses that were better than Notre Dame that still couldn't get more than 17 points against this defense here. So, I mean, what are we looking team totals here? If you like Ohio State, do you fade Notre Dame's team total? If you like Ohio State, are they winning by scoring 28? I mean, how would you approach it from that side?
I have two things here. If you like Notre Dame, you have to play over 17.5. There's no way they're winning a game with 17 points. I mean, 17, 14, 17. To me, it's out of the question. So if you like Notre Dame, that team total is as good a bet as taking the points with them. If you like Ohio State, I don't know that there is any direct correlation, Joe, because of what you just said. Ohio State could win the game, 34-17. That's an over. 31-17 is an over. Ohio State could also win the game 27-3. That's an under. In reference to you talking about how good their defense is, right? So I don't know that there's a direct correlation between Ohio State and either over or under. Whereas I think there really is one with Notre Dame. You're talking about two different teams here. One that's well-rounded, both sides of the ball, offense, defense, and one that's predicated so heavily on defense. The arguments for Notre Dame are strictly based on their defense. And nobody out there arguing that Notre Dame's got an offense that's going to penetrate Ohio State. Nobody. They're banking on turnovers. They're banking on special teams. They're banking on the defense putting up short fields. Nobody's betting Notre Dame because of their offense, where Ohio State's twofold. And to tell you the truth, Joe, Notre Dame hasn't played a twofold team yet. I mean, Penn State's offensive numbers, their score totals are pretty gaudy. But we see they're a one-sided offense. Georgia, like I say, not a great offense. For Notre Dame, this is a different deal. For that reason, I think if you like them, you got to play them over 17.5. And Ohio State, you could play Ohio State over, Ohio State under 50-50. I don't know which way is correct, but I think Ohio State laying points is.
Ralph, what are you thinking there?
I just want to point out something obvious, but maybe it's not obvious to some people. If you listen to the conversations here and you say, well, I'm an Ohio State fan and I want to play Ohio State over 27.5 and Notre Dame under 17.5 to try to figure out a different way to get to the line, I'll just point out this. 27.5 to 17.5 is the 10-point margin. You're much better off just betting Ohio State minus the points than trying to get cute betting one over and one under to find that situation, because you're basically laying 10 points in that role for them that, if both teams pushed, you're not going to push with the half, but there's a 10-point margin there. So sometimes when you're looking at these big games, the books aren't changing. If you're betting Ohio State minus the points, that doesn't necessarily change the money line. They're correlated, but they're different bets. When you're betting the over, the team totals don't change according to that over bet. They all get changed individually. So when you're looking at sides and totals, take a look at those team sides, take a look at those first half bets and see if you can find value, because a lot of times with these big public money games, one line gets inflated and you can find value by finding a separate bet amongst the slew of options we have to wager on this game.
All right, so we don't often talk about it in college football, but we have talked about it actually during these playoffs here. The idea of maybe teasing one of these two teams. We saw a lot of people doing it with Penn State last week. That was brought up against Notre Dame. It's interesting, Drew. I mean, if I can get Notre Dame to -2, and I can get a team like, I don't know, let's say the Kansas City Chiefs at -2, boy, there's a lot of people salivating right now with the possibility of getting Ohio State under a field goal. Not something we'd recommend on an everyday basis, but if you like Ohio State to win, they're going to win by at least a field goal here, Drew.
Yeah, I mean, most likely, Joe. And of course, the Wong teaser, if you can get through the key numbers, 3 and 7 being those, I'm not going to talk you off of that, even though you're going cross sport there, college football and NFL. But still, these are big time games, and therefore you get more of the, tighter point spreads. At least in theory, these teams, should be matched up similarly. And Joe, I want to throw out the special teams with Notre Dame kicker Jeter. 7 of 8 field goals, including 5 of 5 from 40 plus in the last 2 games. I actually think there's a special teams advantage nobody's talking about pointing towards the Irish.
Yeah, it's a solid point. I mean, that kid went from to people were ready to string him up, get him out. And then all of a sudden in the playoffs, he doesn't miss, and he has been absolute money. So certainly rolling in with confidence there. And you're right, you can't discount the special teams aspect of it at all here. But Ralph, what do you think, man? I mean, got a lot of people in the chat room here looking at teasing them down here, Ohio State. I don't hate it. If I can get them under a field goal, you like Ohio State, right? What's the alternative here?
Joe, I cashed a teaser in the first round of the playoffs and the second round of the playoffs, and I simply said this. Listen, I've only made one college football teaser in my life. And that was back in an Army-Navy game where I took the underdog and the under because you had that variance where you're not getting explosive scores. So, and then I followed that up. So I think you certainly can play this like an NFL game, especially like an NFL playoff game with the intensity and now this many games in. I do want to say something, though, where I rarely disagree with Drew, but I actually have Ohio State as a pretty significant special teams edge. Going back to my Phil Steele days and North Coast days, we devised a program where you look at the difference in net punting, offense versus defense, the difference in kick returns, offense versus defense, the kick difference in punt returns, offense versus defense, and add in the kicker. And if you add all those categories in, I actually give Ohio State the edge. So yes, they have the better kicker, but all around, I do not believe they have the better special teams.
I got the hotter kicker because the Ohio State kicker doesn't have to do a whole hell of a lot except kick the extra points, but the field goals are going to be interesting there. Veno, you had mentioned it. Maybe we got a little bit of a head fake here in the marketplace, but if I'm looking to bet Notre Dame, do I think this number is going to get better? I can wait. Or do we think that maybe the best of Notre Dame money hasn't come in yet here? Do we think we can get this number better for Ohio State if we just hang out? Or is this probably what you see is what you're going to get before kickoff?
Yeah, if you're betting Ohio State, I wouldn't count on this thing going down any further, Joe. In fact, this game is played on Monday. The public is going to bet playoffs on Saturday, playoffs on Sunday, and then get to this game on Monday. Yep. Right. And when they get to this game on Monday, they're going to bet the favorite, most likely. And you're more than likely to see maybe this gets pushed back from 8.5 up to 9. So you're not going to get a better number with Ohio State, in my estimation. The teaser question is obviously a good one. I mean, nothing in this is such an inexact science, right? This sports betting, sports handicapping. When you hear these golden rules, like if you bet a college teaser, God forbid, get behind the shed, we're going to shoot you in the head with a shotgun, right? Because you shouldn't do it. But there's always a situation to be able to do it. The point was brought up that you can get Ohio State under the key of 3. If you do same game teaser, the point should also be brought up that you can get under the key of 41. Now you're looking at 40. 2 and 40 is probably a good bet. So, there's a situation for everything. I don't know. I saw you post it, whoever was in the in one of the chats and recommended Ohio State KC. I don't know that people have a lot of patience to have one of their teaser plays go Saturday and the other one go Monday. It's
solid point.
It's tough for people to do. So, special teams wise, Jeter, I mean, that last kick went through, but it did look like somebody from heaven pushed that thing back through the uprights because it was going the wrong way for a while. The dad was really happy. And I'll say this about special teams because I mentioned it, right? I said, if you're betting Notre Dame, you're counting on defense, special teams, all that exterior stuff. Notre Dame has exposed a lot of their special teams hijinks already. You've got Ohio State's attention. Watch out for trick plays. He pulled one against Georgia, et cetera, where Ohio State hasn't used anything yet. So to Ralph's point, maybe Ohio State does have a slight special teams advantage here because they haven't really unfolded anything that Notre Dame could see on tape during these playoffs.
And you got to ask yourself, is this going to come down to a field goal? Because I'm kind of with Drew there. If it does, I like Notre Dame's field goal kicker. I'd rather be lucky than good. I'm just saying, man, if it ain't broke and the kid is feeling it right now, and he's been on top of the world with some big kicks, and really, I can't remember the Ohio State kicker playing a role in any of these big playoff games at this point. So I think if Ohio State has its way, the last thing they're going to want to do is have this game come down to a kicker. Anybody holding an Ohio State future ticket wants nothing to do with getting to know the Ohio State kicker in any way, shape, or form. It would be great if that wasn't the case there. It'll be interesting, though. Who gets, who would be the MVP here if it when it's all said and done? I mean, Will Howard? Would it be Smith? Would it be Riley Leonard? It's going to be interesting to see who is the guy that kind of separates themselves in this game and shows up and show out. And it's a very good possibility Riley Leonard could be the MVP of the game and not win the game. So I think it's a fascinating game. The line movement has been fascinating. A lot of different ways to dissect it between now and Monday. In fact, Drew, whether it be this one or the NFL coming up, college hoops, NBA, what do you got locked and loaded for folks now over at WagerTalk.com? You got anything in this game?
Well, NFL playoffs for sure, Joe, and then college basketball rolling strong right now. So, with the national championship going, it's NFL and college basketball. So we got it up here for this weekend. WagerTalk.com, experts page, Drew Martin. And Joe, I'll leave you with this, man. Ohio State's kicker, Wet Fielding, he has made a little bit of an impact, 3 of 6 in the last 4 games. So just 50% on field goals. And if you remember, in that big Michigan game, he missed 2 clutch kicks there. So I actually think it's a negative for Ohio State, and another point here towards Notre Dame and the kicking advantage.
Love that there, Drew, because I'm with you, man. If this game comes down to a field goal, I'm not feeling excited about having an Ohio State future ticket. That is for sure. So it is going to, special teams. Kicking is for losers, and we know that. Rob, how about you, though? Are you locked, loaded, ready for this game? What else you got rolling over at Wager Talk?
Well, NFL playoffs, we do have a top release already up, Joe. There's going to be an additional one, so be sure for that. This game, too, is going to be added to that list. I got a strong opinion on this game. What's been rolling for me has been NBA. Since December the 1st, up about 32 units. We'll have NBA. There's 2 plays on the card here for tonight. And then, of course, college basketball, big Thursday night, won't be ignored either. Real quick, let me just say that if you're Ryan Day, and you're on the cusp of a potential national championship, and in any situation, Joe, where you're 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 from the Notre Dame 35 or in, that field goal kicker is probably not, his 3 of 6 probably isn't even going to be a factor because they're going to go for it. Now, would you rather have Ohio State going for it if you're Notre Dame or sending that 50% kicker out there? I think that Ryan Day won't choose the kicker. He'll probably look to get first downs. It'll just depend what happens on those really big plays. But I think the last thing that's kind of intangible here in this game is, the Marcus Freeman, Ohio State connection, his team likely to be extremely fired up for their coach to play against his old alma mater. So we'll see. But those are all stuff that we can answer 2020 hindsight. We can backfit that argument Tuesday morning.
Yeah, I am with you there. And Ralph, you just mentioned it, right? You got a big-time 5% play in this national championship game available for folks. What else are you rolling with over at WagerTalk.com?
Oh, I'm getting ready to load my NFL tonight, and I'll be heading to the game. It's perfectly in the middle for where I am in Florida with my son in Cleveland, so he and I are heading to the game, and while the TV viewership is very happy, it's Notre Dame and Ohio State. I am not very happy about the ticket prices yet, so I hope those still come down a little bit by Monday, which I'm sure they will. But number 1 in bowls this season, 11-2, 6-0 on college football 5%. And listen to this record. Since November the 8th, when I've had a college football best bet, that's a 4% or 5%, 92.3% winning days, including 8-0 the last 8 days that's occurred. New 34 gets you, any new customer to WagerTalk, gets you my $35 5% red hot college football play for $1. You save $34. Again, new customers only, code new34.
Love it. New 34, guys. Get it going. Don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Of course, we have much more content rolling here at WagerTalk, including a big divisional round matchups here in the NFL. 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. Great college basketball conference action. The NBA. We've got you covered across all sports here. And believe it or not, Drew, if I'm not mistaken, we are just a couple of weeks away from pitchers and catchers showing up. Is that correct? Have you heard anything about that? I believe I can smell it, Drew. It's almost that time of year, isn't it?
Nothing like opening day, right, Joe? It's one of those sports where it's almost like opposite. As we get into college football, it gets great at the end. NFL as well. Baseball, I almost feel like it's flipped, where opening day is it's a great thing. The spring is here. Yeah, excited about the Diamond this upcoming season, Joe. So I can't wait, man. I'm gonna try to go to a spring training game or two in the Sunshine State if you're around, man.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. And Drew's Daily Diamond also is a must-watch, guys, during baseball season, which is why it would really help to hit that subscribe button and like button if you haven't done so already. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok here as we get ready for a national championship on Monday. Lot still to be decided, though, when it comes to football, and we have got you covered. But hell, been a hell of a year. It's been a hell of a season. Hopefully it's been a profitable one for you guys. We appreciate you joining us each and every week here on the College Football Kickoff Show. Until next season, guys, enjoy the games. We'll see you again soon here on WagerTalk TV. Good luck.